Hey everybody, I am Chris Day. I am here today with Chris Cooper. As you know, I've been in the Villages for 20 years and it is very important for me to work with people that help my business. I find Chris Cooper to be the most fantastic staging lady that I've ever worked with in my career. You'll see if you watch this video how extensive her experience is, but she is one of many people that I use in my business as well as my agents to help sell more homes. So let's get to know her a little bit today. Welcome, Chris.
Well, thank you for having me.
I appreciate you.
Thank you.
And just a little bit of background on Chris. I met her through one of my former assistants. That was my assistant named Kathy for about 10 or 12 years of my career. Kathy introduced us and I was just so wowed by Chris Cooper. So like I said, watch this and you will see.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for all the kind words. And I have to tell you that staging was my life for 20 years. And I told people, don't tell anyone, but I do this for free because I love it so much. It wasn't a job. So it was my passion. And it is my passion. And it's so integral to the sale of a house. So right now I'm spending a lot of time educating people about how important it is.
It's very important. I find in this demographic, sometimes people have a hard time visualizing. They'll even say, Chris, what is this space over here? And I'll say, well, folks, that's a dining room chandelier. That's what goes there. But they really have a hard time. So,
well, moving into an open concept floor plan, which a lot of houses are now, people are just overwhelmed. Where do I put everything? How do I make all the pieces work? And what staging does is illustrate exactly how you can live in the house.
Awesome. So I bring you back to the first question. So, what got you into staging of all the things? I know you have a very extensive background, but what brought you into staging?
Well, I sold real estate actively for 10 years. And I loved it and I was good at it. And then I went into management. I was VP and Director of Training at Prudential, and I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the teaching part, but there was something missing, and I didn't quite know what it was. And I had a degree in interior design and hadn't used it. And I read the most amazing book. It's called Finding Your Perfect Work, and it's by Paul and Sarah Edwards. And it tells you how to take your education, your experience, your contacts, and then how to remix them and bring in what it is that's deep down your passion. And one of the interesting things, questions, they have like checklists and little tests you take. It's more like a workbook, but they said, when you were a child, when you had complete run of your own time, what did you do? What brought you that, what joy brought you to what you would do all day? And that is an indicator of what would make you happy for the rest of your life. I thought that was really interesting.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. So anyway, I was selling real estate, and then I said, well, I always stage my own listings, and they always sold really fast, and people said, oh, the house looks great. And I thought, why not do this and share it with other agents? And at that time, nobody knew what staging was. So I had to educate everyone. And this was in California. And now, if a house doesn't go on the market, isn't staged when it goes on the market, it's the exception. And so now I'm choosing to do a lot of education here in Florida because people aren't as accepting of staging being a part of the process.
Sure. Well, you definitely answered question 2 was how long you've been staging, and you mentioned that was 20 years, but 10 years prior with real estate.
Yeah.
I know when you came in and talked with the group, you told one of your most successful staging stories, and I think it was a home that sold. This may not even be it. I might be speaking for you, but it was a home that sold way above asking price. Is that your most successful story, or is there another one I may not be aware
of? I've staged over 3,000 homes, so there were a lot of success stories that I'm proud of. The one we talked about in class was a new build on a quarry that they filled up with water, and all of a sudden it was a waterfront property, right? And so the builder didn't know how to price it, and he said, "Well, let's price it at $2 million." So I staged it, and I always upstage. I'll talk a little bit about that, but so we staged it, and he said, "I'm not quite sure. Let's bring in some local agents and see what they say." So the agents came in and they recommended $4 million, and he was just, blown away. And so he put it on the market, and it sold for $6 million.
Wow.
And so he had me stage all the rest of his projects, which I was really happy about. So it worked. And, I got some statistics for you today regarding that, about how staging can increase your chances of selling over list. And one thing that people don't realize, and especially in a slower market, that the longer a house sits on the market, the more it costs the sellers, just in maintenance, mortgage costs, taxes. All of that are hidden costs that they don't realize, that are chalking up every day away from that profit. So that's another reason staging is even more important in a slower market.
Definitely. So leading into that, I was going to ask you about those statistics, furnished versus unfurnished. I mean, do you have anything that's tangible from your work? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I'd love to hear it.
I got numbers. I got proof. I brought it. Okay. This is from, when I first started there, I was a pioneer. I had to write my own contracts. I had to train myself. It was all trial and error. Now, the Real Estate Staging Association has been formed, that is a support group for stagers, and provides us with statistics and studies, and how to buy furniture less expensive, and contracts and insurance and all that stuff. So it's a great support group, and their statistics based on 2022, which is the last time that they published this, vacant homes that are staged received offers an average nationally in 19 to 23 days. And occupied homes, 14 days. So it cuts down on that time on the market that is so important. And the important part about staging is that people will stay in the house longer. In a vacant house, they just kind of look and they're out the door. A staged house, people will take their time. They will stay in the house much longer, which really increases the probability that they're going to be writing an offer for you. So that's another thing. And I think it's just really important, and again about contact. Oh, I got another one. Nationally staged homes sell for 6 to 25% more than an unstaged home. Now that's an important statistics for you.
Yeah, arguably right there, you could say that staging would pay for itself by doing it with those, with those shorter market times. So
exactly.
And that definitely really answered question 6. But Chris, what do you feel are the key elements of a staged home? I've seen in the villages where maybe the master's done, a kitchen and a living room, sometimes not a whole home, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. What's the best way to do it?
Well, on any home, I think it's important for both the agent and the stager to understand the demographic of the buyer. And for homes in the villages, for instance, a lot of people need an office type of setup. So I think it's important to show people how one room can be used as an office.
Sure.
And again, describing the function of the rooms, each room, and how people are going to walk through it. Usually, it's interesting, but the last room people will see in their tour of a house is the master bedroom and bathroom. So that's why those two rooms are so important. And also the person that's going to be writing the check for that house is going to be sleeping in that bed. So they want to know what's the atmosphere, how am I going to go to bed every night? What am I going to feel like in that room? So it's important. One thing we didn't cover, how it can increase the value of a house. I got that statistic too. It's a good one. Staged vacant houses, 61% over list price when they're staged, and 18% over asking. And occupied homes, 45% of homes that are staged, 45% sell for over the list price, and 21% over asking. And I think those are real important.
Those are very powerful statistics.
Yeah. And the average nationally is 40,000 over asking price for a staged home. So that justifies the cost of staging.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So when you walk into a blank canvas, probably like an artist, the question is, because I've seen a lot of different themes by stagers that you've done. I know in one houses that I remember you did for me, they always had a unique theme. So how do you decide that?
Well, it's interesting. Every stager has to work with what they're given. Okay? When we walk into that house, if you remember the house that we worked together with on Markland, they had yellow and orange valances on the windows. Okay, so I had to work with the yellow and orange. The floor that they choose, the hardwood, was really difficult because it was the light wood, and the dark wood kind of looked like a tiger stripe almost.
Yeah.
So we had to mitigate that. So every stager has to work with what they're given, and then we take off from there. A lot of times, if we walk into an occupied house, a lot of it is like, okay, what can we get out of here? Because a lot of times people just live with too much stuff, and it's not going to photograph well. So we work with what we're given, and the colors. If we know offhand that nobody's going to be painting, nobody's going to be changing anything, this is what you got. So that's where we start, and then we take it from there.
Great tips. So I see this quite a bit where people may want to save on staging, or they try and do it themselves. And so this leads into, what do you feel that homeowners' most common mistakes when they try and do it themselves? I mean, I would say ones that come off the bat to me is obviously the cluttering, depersonalizing, but I'd love to hear this from you.
Okay, and I think this is where the agent really needs to take the lead. They're the professional, and if a stager, I always suggest at least bring in a stager for a consultation so they can be the bad guy. Okay, they can walk through and say, you got way too much furniture in here, you need to remove this, this, and this. And then the agent doesn't have that bad feeling from the seller, oh, they don't like my furniture. Let the stager be the bad guy and tell them, bottom line, this is what you've got to do. And it's just, and I think also it elevates the agent to the seller in doing that, because you're bringing in a professional. You bring in a home inspector. As an agent, you don't do that yourself. You're bringing a professional. Sure. And that's the same thing. Staging is that important. It's important to bring in a professional who's really going to tell it like it is and takes the pressure off of you. The biggest mistake sellers make in trying to do it themselves is they still leave too much stuff in the place. They don't know how to edit because it's their own personal stuff. Everybody loves their stuff, but you're not selling your stuff. So that's, I think, the biggest problem with sellers it's too personal to them.
Yeah, I always tell folks when I'm there, the reason people fall in love with, let's say, model homes is because they can look at the pictures that have the fake, generic things still left in. They can visualize their own things in there, and there's things off the countertop making it psychologically seem bigger. So models are very depersonalized. It's to get, those builders want to get you interested, and they know it. So I wish our sellers did more to showcase their homes better.
Well, that's the difference between interior design and staging. Interior design is personalization, staging is depersonalization. When I stage a house, I'm trying to picture who that buyer is going to be, and that's who I want it. And it's an emotional decision. Buying a house is emotional. When people go on the internet and they're looking at houses, it's an immediate emotional response when they see that picture. And what staging does, it gives you that content, that picture that you need to get them in the house.
Absolutely. So does staging also get outside of the house, where you sometimes deal with the curb appeal of the home? And what do you think of that as you first pull up, as far as a first impression?
Well, it's really important. You don't want them to keep driving, right? And then secondly, it gives them, their initial impression is whether the house is well maintained. Okay, if they have that feeling, oh, it looks like it's well maintained, they won't be looking for so many things that are wrong, right?
That's true.
Or discounts in price. The other thing that agents forget about is that a lot of people might see the address on the internet and drive by at night. You need to have night lighting when the house is on the market. So if they drive by, oh, they've got to see that outdoor lighting. And that doesn't cost much. You pick up some solar lights and throw them out there, but it really makes a huge difference.
I love that. Speaking of well maintained, this is my own purchasing story, and this is outside of staging, but I remember opening up the AC and I saw like a 8.5 by 11 sheet of how many times he changed the filter over the years. And I was like, wow, this guy's maintained the home well. So it's the same thing with staging and the curb appeal. I think you're exactly right. What's the process that you go through? So tell me, I contact you or a seller contacts you, talk about maybe the consultation, how it works, maybe a brief overview from kind of start to finish. I'd love to hear about it.
Okay. When I was lucky when I was staging that I worked with a core of high producing agents, and they would call me and say, hey, I got a new listing. Here's the address, here's the key, go. And after I was staging a house that day, I'd stop by, I'd have my pull sheet, take a couple pictures. Usually only spend about 10 minutes, but after you stage that many houses, it gets pretty quick. And usually the seller wasn't there. And then I'd submit the contract to the agent, he'd give me a date, and I would show up. Now, that was primarily for vacant houses. And usually in those instances, the agents would pay me. So it was pretty streamlined. If I was dealing with an occupied home, that always would take longer, because I would walk through with the sellers and say, okay, this is your to-do list. You need to take care, pack up this, pack up that. And I give them a to-do list and what date I would be there, and they needed to get that done. So I needed their help. And I think the hardest were staging jobs where there was a divorce.
Oh, geez.
That was real difficult. And also renters who didn't want to leave. They'd leave the house filthy, dirty, and on purpose, because they didn't want to go. So those were the most difficult ones, and we would prepare ourselves for that. But every situation was different. But I have to say that the one thing that I would love is when people would come back. I always kick them out while we were working, but the looks on their faces when they would see the transformation was worth it, right?
Definitely.
Right.
So what are some budget-friendly staging tips for sellers? I'm sure there's some folks at home now in Ohio or Massachusetts or wherever that are watching this, and they're wanting to get down here. And I've heard it from some people, Chris, I have 3 or 4 decades worth of clutter junk. But what are some budget-friendly things you can push out to folks, not only in the villages, but maybe back home?
Okay. Paint is the least expensive, most transformative thing you can do. Fresh paint. Changing out light fixtures, updating light fixtures, it's huge. Okay. Making sure everything is fixed. I'm a believer in getting a home inspection before it's listed, so that you can fix things ahead of time.
Sure.
Take away those objections right off the bat. So getting those things fixed. If something every seller knows something that needs to be fixed and you've been putting it off. Well, guess what? That buyer is going to get that on a home inspection. They're going to want a big discount. So you want to take away all those discounted things. And then the other things are replacing flooring, carpet, new carpet, if got carpet in. And those are the main things, the cosmetic things. Another thing that I advise is the front door handle. It's important in the fact that it's the first thing a buyer will hold. It's got to feel substantial. It can't be rickety. It's got to feel good. So you appeal to all those senses, right? And some of it is subliminal, I always advise symmetry. By the front door, have two things by the front door. Symmetry, Risa did this study about how it affects the brain. When you see symmetrical things, your brain relaxes. So we always bring in symmetry in the staging as well.
Interesting. So how do you handle challenging layouts? I know for me in the villages, there's definitely plans that are more desirable than others. I think of some off the top of my head, and I don't want to mention them because there's probably some folks watching this that live in them, but they're more challenging to sell. If I could pull the statistics on days on market for those versus others, they're going to be longer. So how do you help in those instances?
I think you need to optimize function through staging. So if you have some rooms that are questionable, what can I use this for? Have the stager define what that room can be used for. And then also sometimes you can take the least attractive feature and make it the main attraction. And I think I told you a story. I walked into a house that was empty, but before they left, they decided to paint the centerpiece of the living room all the way to the 20-foot ceiling, a bright fire engine red fireplace.
Oh, God.
And it was like, and there was nothing I could do about it. So we made it the center attract. We did the whole house in black, white, and red. And all of a sudden the fireplace was, oh yeah, we meant to do that. So you just play that up. And sometimes that works. Okay, sometimes it works.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. I actually have a listing I'm putting on now. It's outside the villages, but it's expiring. And I always like to analyze why the listing expired. It's a combination of many things, but they actually had red cabinets. And I said, how many showings did you have over the course of time? And it was minimal. And what I see when folks go in homes is many times women gravitate towards kitchens.
Oh, they're so important.
And men a lot of times towards garages.
Right.
But I said, you may not even get a person in the front door because they're looking at pictures and already ruling it out. So we're in the process actually of painting the cabinets white and neutralizing, like you said, a common objection, getting rid of something that I know may come up.
Yeah.
So obviously, Chris, you pioneered this industry because to my knowledge, it didn't even exist until you started doing it. So how has it evolved over the course of time? Obviously there's been some changes over the course of time. What have you seen?
Well, first of all, how it's spread all over the world. There are now home stagers in Denmark and Australia, all over the world. So that's exciting. And also the acceptance that it's a real benefit to the real estate industry as a marketing tool. And now there's training for people who want to get into staging, and there's professional standards. We have a code of ethics as far as how we do business, and so the whole industry is just really blossomed. It's exciting, and it gives us as stagers the credentials we need to do what we do, and to convince people, yeah, we know what we're doing. We got the statistics. We're coming. We know what to do. So that's all of that. To see how the industry has evolved is just so exciting to me.
Well, and leading into this, like, what trends are you seeing? Obviously, there's trends happening. I know a trend is artificial intelligence, virtual staging. I know physical staging is so much more impactful, because it's like when they open the door of the beautiful pictures they saw, they're like, where's, and then, they're not reading it's virtual.
Well, and that's when, virtual staging, sure, it's served a purpose, especially during COVID. But when they're opening that door and seeing an empty house, that is not the time that you want them to be disappointed. That's the point you want them to be, that excitement level to go up, because that's where when they're gonna write an offer. So you don't want to have that disappointment when they walk in. And people fall in love with the pictures. That's what it is, because they're gonna make a list, and they're gonna have 10 houses. Okay, these are our top 10. And if you don't make that list, they're not even gonna come in to see it.
I agree. I've seen some that are virtually staged, and then it's like disappointment, and it's back to statistically people not spending as much time in a home, and then it's boop, boop, boop. And they may have considered or may have stayed longer had the palette been more unique.
Yeah, where are they going to sit? If they want to write an offer, where are they going to sit to do that, right? You got to have that.
I have those fold-out chairs in my car. I can go get those right now. So what, obviously you work with, because when I've worked with you, you kind of say, hey, Chris, I'm going to be ready on this date for the professional photographer. But, kind of tell me how you're working with, in conjunction of the professional photos, virtual tours, and things like that.
Okay, well, it's a stager's job to have that house, as I call it, magazine ready as they leave. And often photographers would be at the front door waiting for us to finish, to take those pictures. It's important for the stager to provide the correct lighting that usually photographers will supplement. The lighting is really important. But that house needs to be photo ready from the stager's efforts, as the photographer doesn't want to start moving around furniture. So as I would go from room to room, as we were finishing up a job, for instance, I would be like mentally taking a picture. Okay, this is a good shot. This is a good shot. And sometimes I'd even tell, try this, right? Because the photography is everything. It really is.
It is.
Right now, for staging, that is the most important thing, is getting that content. And if you don't have that content, that's your starting point. If you don't have, you're coming from a disability from day one and getting that house sold. It's just reality.
I agree with you. So for those that may be watching that are maybe real estate agents locally, so kind of say to them, how do you work with us? How do you ensure the best presentation of the home? I'm definitely going to put your contact information in the comments so people can reach out to you, whether they're in another state or locally.
Sure.
But kind of touch on that if you don't mind.
Well, I always recommend getting at least a consultation. When you got that listing, take the lead as an agent, show your strength, and say, these are my recommendations. Let's get a professional stager in here so that she can tell you exactly how to optimize your return on investment on this house, optimize your equity. I want you to get the most amount of money for this house as I can as your agent, and this is a way that I have found it works. Now, I mean, and another thing, I mean, for most sellers, staging is considered a selling expense as well. So it goes into that lump of tax write-offs, as I understand it. So always check with your tax professional and all that stuff. But it is a selling expense, and you're optimizing your equity. So that's the most important thing. They want as much money in their pocket in the shortest amount of time.
I love that. So, Chris, one other thing, this is a question I didn't write down, but I remember you telling me that, I mean, weren't you dealing with like warehouses of furniture or 15 sorts of, what was it like in your background? You had, this is how extensive it was. And you were doing this, like a company wanted to use you for almost like their whole company, right?
Yeah, well, okay, one of the trends that I see occurring on the West Coast, which is where staging really started, is that brokerages are having in-house stagers that work specifically with the brand and go out and work specifically with that company. Some of those companies even have warehouses of furniture for their vacant houses, and also for houses that are occupied, art and accessories that they can use to bring in, so they take over the whole process for the seller. And in my own case, I mean, I had 4 warehouses, 5 trucks, 18 employees, and the warehouses were 22 feet high. They were packed to the ceiling, and I had enough furniture to stage 60 homes at any one time. And at one time, I mean, there were times the warehouse was empty and everything was out. So it can get a little crazy because you think, oh, because I never took the furniture from one house and did that look in the next house. I remixed it, and each house was individual because, you know, agents, when they're out on tour, they see the houses. If I don't want them to walk into one of my listings and say, wait a minute, this is deja vu. I just saw this house over there. So, you know, I felt it was important that each house was completely redefined with a different mix of furniture. But yeah, it was a little crazy.
I've never heard of a stager that had that type of experience or credentials. That just amazes me, because I know all the moving parts of real estate and have 18 employees and them all delivering furniture and what needs to go to this house and that house. That's an incredible staging operation. I know here you have some relationships, and this is a question I didn't write down, but I know you have some relationships with some area furniture places and things like that. Do you want to touch on that a little bit?
Well, the one company I was working with is now kind of pulling back. So I am concentrating on working with a staging company that's between here and Tampa, but they're expanding in this area, and they have the inventory, and they have the insurance, and they have all that. So I think I'm going to be working with them in advancing into the villages. As you know, there's not a lot of staging going on here.
Not nearly enough. And I see a lot of good homes, like you said, sit, and they could use a revitalization. I mean, they could use someone that comes in and says, remove the pink countertops or walls, or, you know, seafoam green curtains. I mean, the Villages, to me, because it's been around, 40-ish years, you can kind of see the trends and colors.
Yeah.
I remember seeing, there's the peaches and seafoam greens time. There's the blues and greens, the royal blues and greens. There was, the time when gold fixtures were in style. And actually, what's funny is if you wait long enough, they come back in style.
I know.
Because they're coming back in style. I did a flip townhome in downtown Orlando, and my business partner, I did white cabinets and a lot of gold fixtures and faucets. So yeah, if you wait long enough,
exactly.
So
yeah, I mean, and that's another thing that sellers can do to fix up their house. Is just change the hardware in the kitchen. Simple things, simple cosmetic changes can make a real big difference. And what it does, it lets the buyers know, oh, they keep up on things. One statistics that I give to sellers is, in order to keep your house equal to what's on the market, you should be reinvesting 1% of the value back into the house annually. Are you doing that? And most of them say, no.
I've had one customer ever that did that I remember, and it was by the time they were ready to move, they had a move-in ready home that was very contemporary, and it was. They said, I picked a master bath this year, and I did this, and it was just incredible. After a decade, it looked move-in ready, and it sold fast.
And so it works.
It does.
But most people don't. So then I explained to them, okay, now it's time to sell. We've got a little bit of deferred maintenance that we need to do. And a lot of sellers will understand that. Oh yeah, well, I'm kind of dragging my feet and, that type of thing. So, it's just educating sellers as to how they can get more money.
And everyone wants to make more money.
Yeah.
Yep.
You're not there to take their money. You're there to give them more money.
I love that.
Yeah. And that's what we're supposed to do. I love to work with agents. Some agents are more talented than others, but I love to be their support and their cheerleader, and I always tell the sellers, oh, you're working with them? Oh, they are so good. You're going to be so happy with them. And it's just a team effort.
Definitely. Well, Chris, I'm really thankful that you spent this time with me this morning.
Sure.
For those of you at home, I'm going to put Chris's information in the comments. Definitely, if you need staging help in the villages or surrounding area, definitely get in touch with her. I can't highly recommend her enough. You will never meet a stager with this type of resume and credentials. In fact, I didn't even know these type of resumes or credentials existed. I think a lot of staging companies are fly by night. Truth be told, I think some people get in over their head. Definitely not you. You're the most prepared, professional woman, and I love you by my side when I do go to some of those challenging listings, or even ones we're just looking to take from a 9 to a 10. So
thank you.
So definitely get in touch with Chris. She's a Villages resident. She knows the ins and outs here. She definitely works with my brokerage locally. So thank you so much for watching today. I hope whether you're local or you're in another state, you maybe picked up a tip for selling your own home, and that allows you to get here faster. I'm also going to put my information in the comments, so if you have any questions or concerns, definitely reach out. I'd love to connect. If you like the video, please like or subscribe. Thank you.
Thank you.